When I opened that box, I felt his scent again, that faint musk of cedar and oil that clung to his favorite tie. My hands trembled as I saw the note. I told you I'd keep my promise. He'd been gone 3 years. That was the moment I realized. Some promises don't die with the people who make them. My name is Ruth Ann Carter, and I'm from Savannah, Georgia. Before I go on, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? I always love hearing where these stories reach, because this one still gives me chills when I think about it. That afternoon had been peaceful, the kind of quiet that only happens when you've finally made peace with being alone. I was in my garden, trimming the rosebush Tom planted the year we married. The sky was heavy with spring clouds, the air thick with that sweet smell of rain that never quite comes. My hands were dirty, my knees ached, and the silence felt almost holy. Then the phone rang. It was my daughter, Emily. Her voice was tight, trembling the way it used to when she was little and tried not to cry. "Mom," she said, "you need to come right now." My heart dropped. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" She hesitated just for a second and then whispered, "It's from Dad." I froze. I thought I'd misheard. "What do you mean from Dad?" There's a package here. It's got his name. It's wrapped in one of his ties. Mom, it's his handwriting, I swear." For a moment, I couldn't speak. It felt like the whole world narrowed to the sound of my heartbeat. Tom had been gone for 3 years. Gone so suddenly, I never got to say goodbye properly. He'd collapsed in our living room one morning, halfway through his second cup of coffee. By the time I'd reached him, it was too late. I remember begging the doctors to check again, screaming his name like maybe I could call his soul back. I hadn't touched his ties since the funeral. They still hung in our closet, each one neatly rolled, waiting for a man who'd never wear them again. And now Emily was saying there was one, wrapped around a box. The drive to her house was a blur of wet roads and trembling hands. My chest felt tight, like I was being pulled between grief and something else, something that almost felt like hope, though I was too afraid to name it. Emily lived just outside town, in the same house she'd bought with her husband before the divorce. I could see her silhouette waiting by the window when I pulled up. She opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. Not anymore. On the kitchen table sat a small wooden box, no bigger than a loaf of bread, wrapped neatly with Tom's navy blue tie, the one with the tiny silver stripes I used to iron for him every Sunday. I could barely breathe. "Where did this come from?" I asked. "It was on the porch when I got home," Emily said. No name, no delivery slip, just this. I reached out, touched the box. The wood was smooth and warm, like it had been held by someone recently. The knot in the tie was perfect, the way Tom always tied it, with that small dimple right under the chin. A memory hit me. His laughter that morning before work, saying, "One day when I'm gone, you'll still smell me on these ties." I'd rolled my eyes back then, teasing him for being dramatic. Now my throat burned. Emily whispered, "Mom, should we open it?" I nodded slowly. My fingers shook as I pulled the knot loose, careful not to ruin it. And right then, before I even lifted the lid, I felt something shift. In the air, in the silence, in the way Emily's breath hitched beside me. Because deep down, I knew whatever was inside that box wasn't just a gift. It was a message from the man I thought I'd buried 3 years ago. The room was so still that I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Emily stood beside me, clutching the edge of the counter like it might hold her steady. I ran my fingers along the lid one last time before I opened it. Inside was a pocket watch, gold, old, and polished, the kind Tom used to admire in antique shops but never bought for himself. Its face was slightly cracked, but it still gleamed faintly under the kitchen light. And there, engraved on the back, were the words that made my knees weaken. "For my girls. Love always, Tom." My throat tightened. He called us that," I whispered. "Me and you, his girls." Emily covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide and glistening. "Mom, this isn't funny. It can't be real." But I could tell from the weight of it, from the tiny scratch above the hinge. This wasn't new. It was his. Beneath the watch lay a folded piece of paper, yellowed slightly at the edges. I hesitated, then unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was familiar, neat, slanted, confident, his handwriting. The letter read, "If you're reading this, I've kept my promise. You'll know when the time is right. Tom." Just one line, no date, no explanation, nothing else. I stared at those words, my mind scrambling to remember. A promise? Which one? Tom had made me plenty over the years. Small ones, tender ones. That he'd build me a porch swing one day, that he'd fix the bathroom pipe, that he'd never let me go first because ladies should always have the last word. But there was one promise I couldn't shake. The night before he died, we'd had one of those quiet, late-night talks, the kind couples have after decades together, when words are soft and laughter is slow. I'd been worried about the bills, the house, the future. And he'd smiled and said, "You'll never be unprotected, Ruth. I'll take care of you, no matter what happens." I remember rolling my eyes and saying, "That's not funny, Tom." He'd taken my hand and whispered, "It's a promise." Now, standing in Emily's kitchen, I could feel that moment echoing in my chest. Emily frowned. "Mom, maybe someone's trying to mess with us, maybe a scam?" I shook my head. "No, honey, nobody else knew that promise. Nobody." She took the letter gently from me, her hands trembling. Then how is this possible? I didn't have an answer. Instead, I lifted the watch, pressing the cold metal to my palm. For a second, I thought I heard something. A faint tick. I held it closer to my ear, and yes, there it was. The soft, rhythmic ticking, steady as a heartbeat. "It still works," I whispered, "after all these years." Emily stepped back, tears forming. "Mom, this is, I don't know, it's beautiful, but it's..." She stopped, wiping her cheek. "It's scary, too." I nodded. "It feels like he's trying to tell us something." That night, after Emily went to bed, I sat alone on her porch with that watch in my lap, listening to its ticking under the hum of the night. Every sound, the crickets, the rustling trees, even the wind, felt like it carried a memory. I ran my thumb over the engraving again. For my girls. Somewhere deep in my gut, I knew this wasn't just about sentiment. Tom Carter had never done anything halfway. If he left this, there was a reason. The next morning, Emily came into the kitchen holding the small box, her face pale. "Mom," she said softly, "there's something else on the back of the box." She turned it around, and sure enough, faintly etched into the wood were a few numbers and a name. Savannah Law Office, Suite 214. I felt the air leave my lungs. That office had closed years ago, the one Tom used to pass by on his way to work. And for the first time since he died, I felt that strange pull again, like Tom was still somewhere, guiding me. The next morning, the sun hadn't even burned through the fog when I pulled into the old part of town, the part where time seemed to move slower and buildings kept their secrets tucked behind faded paint and dusty windows. Savannah Law Office, Suite 214. That was what the box said. Emily had begged me to wait for her, but I couldn't. Something deep inside told me I needed to do this alone, like it was meant to be, just between me and him. The building looked abandoned. Cracked steps led up to a heavy wooden door. A faded sign hung crookedly above it, the gold lettering chipped away by years of neglect. I hesitated before stepping inside, half expecting cobwebs and silence. But there was a faint sound, the distant buzz of a radio and the slow scrape of a broom. An old janitor, his back bent with age, looked up when he saw me. His face was creased and kind, the kind of face that's seen too many years to be surprised by much anymore. "Morning," he said, leaning on his broom. "You lost, ma'am?" I held out the small box. "I'm looking for this office. Savannah Law, Suite 2I14. My husband had some kind of connection to it before he passed. He squinted, wiping his hands on his overalls. That firm? Been gone near 10 years now. Used to be run by a fella named James Whitlock. Retired to Florida, last I heard. I nodded, disappointed but not defeated. Do you happen to know if anyone named Tom Carter ever came here? He would have been a carpenter, maybe did some work around the place? At the mention of Tom's name, the old man's expression changed. His eyes narrowed slightly, recognition flickering there. Carter, he murmured. Tall man, dark hair, polite as could be. Yeah, I remember him. Came by a few times right before the firm closed up. Left something with Mr. Whitlock. Said it was for his wife if she ever came askin'. My breath caught. He did? The janitor nodded slowly. Wait here. He disappeared down a long hallway, his boots echoing softly against the old tile floor. Minutes stretched like hours until he returned, holding a small metal key on a worn leather tag. This was in the maintenance drawer, he said, handing it to me. Said to keep it safe. Guess I did. I turned the tag over. It read, Safe Keep Storage, Locker 318. My heart pounded in my chest. Safe Keep Storage was across town, a place Tom had worked near years ago. I thanked the man, my voice trembling, and drove straight there. The storage facility was quiet, rows upon rows of metal doors stretching like an endless maze. The air smelled faintly of dust and oil, old lives sealed away in boxes. Locker 318 was in the far corner, a dull gray door with a single lock that fit the key perfectly. My fingers shook as I turned it. The door creaked open, revealing the scent of cedar and paper. Inside was a single brown leather briefcase sitting neatly on a small wooden crate. Nothing else. I carried it out into the sunlight and opened it. Inside were documents, photographs, and 2 sealed envelopes, one labeled for Ruth and the other for Emily. The sight of my name in his handwriting nearly broke me. Beneath the envelopes were more papers, legal-looking, stamped, and notarized. At the top of one, bold letters read, Last Will and Testament, Thomas J. Carter. I froze. We'd already filed a will after his death, a simple one the lawyer drew up years earlier, but this one was dated 2 weeks before he died. Emily's voice echoed in my head. Mom, maybe someone's playing a joke. But this wasn't a joke. This was Tom, reaching out from the past with purpose. As I clutched that briefcase to my chest, the watch in my pocket ticked louder, like it knew something I didn't, and deep down I could feel it. This wasn't about money or property. This was about truth, and whatever it was, I was about to find out what promise my husband had truly meant to keep. I sat in my car, outside, the storage facility for what felt like forever, staring at the brown leather briefcase resting on the passenger seat. The morning sun had started to climb, spilling gold across the cracked dashboard, but I couldn't move. My fingers traced the rough edges of the envelope labeled for Ruth. Tom's handwriting, steady, precise, the same way he used to sign his notes to me before work, the same hand that had built our porch swing, carved our initials into the oak tree in the backyard, and now reached across 3 years of silence. I took a deep breath and opened it. Inside was a letter, 3 pages long. His scent clung faintly to the paper, that mix of sawdust, coffee, and peppermint gum. My eyes blurred before I even began to read. Ruth, my love. If you're holding this, it means I didn't get the chance to say everything I should have. I know this letter will bring pain, but I ask you to read it all before you decide how you feel about me. Already my hands trembled. The words seemed to breathe on the page. Before we met, I made mistakes. One of those mistakes left behind someone I never told you about. A son. His name is Daniel. I felt the air leave my lungs. He was born before I ever met you. I didn't know about him until years later. His mother, Linda, kept him from me until I tracked her down after our wedding. She didn't want money or contact, only help for his future. I tried to do right by him quietly. I never told you because I couldn't bear to see the disappointment in your eyes. But I promised Linda I'd make sure Daniel was taken care of, no matter what happened to me." The words blurred together. I pressed the page to my chest, fighting to breathe. He had a son he never told me about. All those years of trust, of laughter, of shared pain, of nights spent talking about everything under the sun. And this had been buried underneath. Emily's voice jolted me back. "Mom?" I hadn't realized she'd followed me. She stood outside the car, her arms wrapped around herself, eyes red. "You've been sitting here for an hour." I hesitated, unsure if I should show her, but she saw the letter in my hand and the look on my face was enough. She reached through the window and snatched the page. I tried to stop her. "Emily, wait." But it was too late. Her eyes raced across the words, her jaw clenched, her face twisting between disbelief and anger. "A son?" she whispered. "He had a son?" I swallowed hard. "Before me. He said he didn't know." She threw the paper down. "How long were you going to keep this from me? You knew, didn't you?" "Of course not," my voice cracked. "I just found out." She shook her head, backing away. "No, he was perfect to you. You always said that. And now what? I'm supposed to believe he was lying all those years." Tears burned my eyes. "He wasn't perfect, baby. None of us are." She turned toward the road, her voice trembling. "He lied to us, Mom. Both of us. You can't defend that." And then she walked away. I sat there, the letter heavy in my lap, the watch ticking faintly in my coat pocket. Steady, unbothered, eternal. It felt like Tom was somewhere near, whispering apologies I could no longer hear. That night, I placed the watch on my nightstand and stared at it until I fell asleep, its rhythm haunting me. When I woke up, I knew what I had to do. If Tom had kept a secret this deep, there had to be more. And I wasn't going to stop until I uncovered every piece of the truth he left behind, no matter how much it hurt. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with the letter spread out before me. The words stared back like ghosts I couldn't banish. The ink was slightly smudged near the bottom, a place where I imagined Tom's hand might have trembled. A name kept echoing in my head. Linda. He had written it twice, once plainly, once tenderly. I whispered it aloud, testing the sound. Linda? It felt foreign and heavy on my tongue, a name that had once belonged to another woman's life with my husband. I'd spent 30 years thinking I knew everything about the man I married, his habits, his temper, the way he hummed under his breath when sanding wood. Yet now, I realized there were corners of his life he'd never let me see. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled out my laptop and began searching. Linda Porter, Savannah. Linda Porter, 60s. Linda Porter, carpenter connection. After an hour, I found her. A small listing for a craft fair vendor in a nearby town called Willow Creek. She ran a small stand that sold hand-painted wooden signs. My pulse quickened. Woodwork, of course. I didn't tell Emily where I was going. She'd made it clear the night before that she wanted nothing more to do with Dad's ghosts. So I drove alone, past fields glowing gold in the afternoon light, the letter folded carefully in my purse. Willow Creek was quiet. A postcard town with one main street and a clock tower that chimed every half hour. I found Linda's stand tucked beneath an awning at the edge of the park. She was older than me, maybe early 60s, with kind eyes framed by lines of living, not bitterness. Her hair was silver, pulled into a bun, and her hands were speckled with paint. When she saw me approach, she smiled politely. "Looking for something special?" I hesitated. "I'm looking for you, actually. Are you Linda Porter?" Her expression faltered slightly. "Yes." "Do I know you?" I reached into my purse and took out the letter. "No, but I think we knew the same man." When she read the name Tom Carter at the bottom, her shoulders stiffened. She set her paintbrush down carefully, as if placing something fragile to rest. "Tom," she whispered. Then after a moment, He told me you might come one day." My breath caught. "He told you?" She nodded, eyes glistening. "He said if the truth ever found its way to you, I should tell you everything." We sat on the bench beside her booth, and for the first time, I heard the story my husband had hidden. Linda and Tom had been sweethearts in their 20s, engaged once, but life had pulled them in different directions. He moved for work, she stayed to care for her sick mother. By the time they crossed paths again, he was with me. She looked away, voice trembling. "I found out I was pregnant after he left. I didn't tell him. I didn't want to trap him. He was happy. He'd found a good woman. And later, when Daniel was born, I convinced myself I didn't need him. Years later, when Daniel was in college, Tom found them. Not out of guilt, she said, but out of love. Quiet love, the kind that carries shame alongside devotion. He helped us, Ruth, but not with words, with actions. He paid for Daniel's schooling, fixed the roof when it leaked. He'd come by sometimes, leave a box of groceries or send money through friends, always anonymously. I begged him not to ruin what he had with you." Her eyes met mine. He honored both families in his own broken way. I sat there, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I had every right to hate her, to despise the years of lies, the silence, the betrayal. But when I looked at her trembling hands and heard the ache in her voice, all I felt was sadness. Because Tom hadn't just kept one promise, he'd tried to keep two. Before I left, Linda handed me a photo, a young man, maybe 30, standing beside a workshop with Tom. His smile was familiar. "This is Daniel," she said softly. "He should know you now." I stared at that photo the whole drive home, the ticking watch beside me on the seat. I'd buried my husband's body years ago, but I was only just beginning to meet the man he truly was. When I got home that evening, the air felt heavier, like the truth had followed me inside and refused to leave. The house, once a comfort, now felt crowded with things that weren't really mine. The photo of Tom on the mantel, his flannel jacket still hanging by the door, the faint smell of cedar in the closet. I placed the photograph of Daniel beside Tom's picture and sat across from them both. The resemblance was undeniable, the same eyes, the same half-smile that always looked like it was holding back a secret. For a long time, I just stared, torn between grief and understanding. He hadn't lied to hurt me. He'd lied to protect everyone, in the only way he knew how. When Emily showed up later that night, her tone was already sharp. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her jaw set tight. "You went to see her, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, Linda Porter. She told me everything." Emily scoffed, pacing the room. "So it's all true, then. He had a secret family. God, Mom, how can you even say her name?" "Because she's a person, Emily, and so is Daniel. None of this was his fault." Her voice cracked. "You're defending him? The man who lied to you? To us?" I stood, trying to stay calm. "He didn't want to hurt us. He thought he was doing the right thing." She laughed bitterly. "Right thing? You mean abandoning your daughter for a stranger?" The way she said stranger hit me like a knife. I took a slow breath. "Daniel isn't a stranger. He's your half-brother." She froze, her eyes narrowing. "He's nothing to me." I wanted to reach for her, to calm the storm I saw building behind her eyes, but she turned away. "You don't get it, Mom. I spent my whole life thinking Dad loved me the most, and now I find out he was out there playing savior to some other family?" Her words stung. "Love isn't a limited thing, Emily. It doesn't run out because it's shared." She shook her head. "You sound just like him." She stormed upstairs, slamming her old bedroom door. I let her go. I'd learned that some truths have to sit in silence before they can be understood. A few days passed. I hadn't heard from her. I spent my time sorting through the documents in Tom's briefcase, trying to piece together what he'd intended. Among the papers was a small trust form. Tom had set aside a modest fund, not for me or Emily, but for Daniel. It wasn't much, but it was his final gesture of responsibility. A father trying to bridge decades of silence. That night, Emily came by again, her voice calm in a way that made me uneasy. "I've been thinking," she said, "maybe we should take that trust to a lawyer. Make sure it's legitimate." Something in her tone felt off. I hesitated, then agreed to meet at the bank in the morning. But when I got there, she wasn't waiting. The clerk informed me that someone had already accessed the account the night before, using Tom's death certificate and power of attorney papers. I felt my stomach drop. It was Emily. She'd withdrawn the money, every penny. When she finally answered her phone, her voice was trembling but defiant. "I took what's ours, Mom. Dad left that money because of you and me. We were his family." "Emily," I said quietly, holding back tears, "that wasn't for us. That was for Daniel, to make peace with the life he never got to live." She fell silent. "Do you really think stealing it honors your father's memory?" I asked softly. Her voice cracked. "He left me nothing, Mom. Nothing but a box and a lie. I deserve something real." I wanted to shout, but all I felt was exhaustion. "Then keep it," I said finally, "but don't think it'll buy you peace." I hung up before I could hear her answer. That night, I sat in Tom's chair, the ticking watch on my wrist now heavy with meaning. He had tried to protect his family, both of them, and now his. Secret had turned us against each other, but I made a decision then. If he couldn't keep his promise in life, I would keep it for him in death. I would make things right, even if it meant losing the last piece of my daughter's love. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The house was quiet. That thick kind of quiet that settles after too much pain has been spoken. I stood by the window, the sunrise washing the sky in soft pinks and golds, and I realized something simple, yet heavy. I could either let the truth destroy what was left of my family, or I could try to heal it. Tom's letter had broken me open, but maybe that was its purpose. Maybe he'd known that truth, no matter how painful, could still be the only road toward peace. I made myself a cup of tea, set the old pocket watch on the table, and whispered, "You said you'd protect us, Tom. I guess now it's my turn." By noon, I'd made my decision. I sold one of the rental houses Tom and I had once owned, the one near the coast we'd dreamed of retiring in. It wasn't easy. That house held memories of laughter, paint on the walls from when Emily was little, and summer nights that smelled of salt and vanilla candles. But I knew what I was doing. With the money, I split it 3 ways. 1 share for me, 1 for Emily, and 1 for Daniel. It wasn't about the amount. It was about fairness, closure, and balance. When the sale cleared, I wrote 2 letters, 1 to Emily, 1 to Daniel, and mailed the checks with them. No lectures, no apologies, just truth. To Emily, I wrote, "Your father's secrets hurt both of us, but don't let anger be the only thing you inherit. He loved you. I love you. And I hope one day you'll see that forgiving him doesn't mean forgetting the pain. It means freeing yourself from it." To Daniel, I wrote, "You don't know me, but you carry the best parts of the man I loved. He wanted to make things right, and now he finally can. Use this to build the life he wished he could have shared with you." I didn't know if either of them would accept it, but I knew I had to send it. Weeks passed. Silence filled the space where I used to expect Emily's calls. I tried not to look at my phone too often, but hope is a stubborn thing. Then one evening, as I watered the garden, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I turned, and there she was. Emily stood by the mailbox holding an envelope in her hand. She looked different, softer, tired, but not angry anymore. "I got your letter," she said. I nodded, afraid to speak. She swallowed hard. "You were right, Mom, about everything. I shouldn't have taken that money. I gave it back, all of it." Tears burned my eyes. "Emily." She walked closer, pressing something into my palm, the pocket watch. Dad's promise wasn't about protecting us from pain. It was about making sure we never lost each other. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "Daniel called me. He thanked me. He wants to meet us." I smiled through the tears. Then I guess your father finally kept his promise after all. A month later, the three of us met at the old oak tree behind my house, the one Tom had carved our initials into decades ago. Daniel was taller than I imagined, his voice warm and steady. There was no awkwardness, just quiet understanding, like we were all standing in the same shadow and learning how to share the light. Emily handed him the photo of Tom she'd once refused to look at. "He'd be happy we're here," she said softly. Daniel smiled. He'd probably say, "Took y'all long enough." We all laughed, not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that lets it go. Later that night, after they'd gone, I sat on the porch beneath a sky full of stars. The box that had started it all sat beside me, the tie still neatly folded, the scent of cedar fading but not gone. I placed the pocket watch inside, closed the lid gently and whispered, "You did it, Tom. You kept your promise." Then I smiled to myself because I finally understood. Some promises don't exist to protect us from pain. They exist to teach us that love, even when it breaks, even when it hides behind lies, can still find its way home. And if you've ever discovered a secret after someone you loved was gone, you know that feeling, that ache mixed with grace. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and remember, some truths are worth the pain they bring, because sometimes what feels like the end of a story is really the promise, finally kept,